ladies and gentlemen, I'm very excited to introduce you to my very first sales director, Mr. Steve Caldwell.
Hello, Lauren.
Thank you so much for joining us.
My
You guys,
pleasure.
this is such a treat. We're going to chat for a couple minutes about how we know each other, and then I've asked Steve to share some of his expertise with us. He is an author, a coach, an amazing sales leader, and an expert in my favorite behavioral tool called Predictive Index. So I just want to talk for just a second about why you said yes 20 years ago. So I'm on this path where I am today because 20 years ago, Steve offered to hire me as a sales rep, and I said, no, pretty sure I'm only going to take the management position. And be clear, I was completely unqualified for that management position. I think maybe it was my PI that helped you decide to take that chance on me. Is that right?
Well, I would say it wasn't about qualification. You just didn't have any experience.
Zero.
And the problem that people have is that most jobs, especially management jobs in the United States, people just don't like giving them to people that have no experience when they don't meet them or have never met them before. And so when I looked at your resume, your background, and then I combined that with the behavioral tool that we're going to talk about today, all I saw was tremendous potential. It was not a matter of you being unqualified. You just needed to be trained, and you needed a chance to show the world what you could do.
God, that's just how I felt. It was like you were inside my 23-year-old brain, which is just a year or two ago, by the way. I just want to point out that so many of the women who are in our program are exactly in that situation. Yeah. They are a part of Girls Club to get the training, the mentoring, the confidence, and the help, that first chance, that leg up into their first management position. And I love that we are starting this journey with you, the person who gave that chance to me, and learning more about how they can leverage their own strengths to make that move successfully.
Well, it's going to be my privilege to share, and it also fulfills a lifelong commitment that I've had, as you well know, that I love helping people achieve everything that they're capable of, and I especially love helping women achieve their goals in business. And as a father of two daughters, and they're both very successful, I'm really thrilled to be able to do that. And I just want people to be able to achieve what they are blessed to be able to achieve. And it's just a great way to share for me. So I'm happy to be here and happy to help.
Thank you. You know, that passion and commitment is really obvious in all of the work that you put into the world. So thank you for that. I want to talk for just a minute about when I did my first Predictive Index survey. I had been in management for about 28 seconds. And I was running a team of 12 folks under you in a reseller, a tech reseller. Everybody on the team had more experience and was older than I was. And I did this survey, and everyone's like, oh, it's another personality test. And I filled it out and didn't even know what to expect. And when I got it back, it was like, oh my God, they've been following me around for 10 years. How do they know this? It was so insightful. But the most important thing wasn't just the accuracy. It was that it helped me finally understand who I was, and how to leverage those strengths. So we'll talk about the different strengths in there, and I'll share folks with my PI and what that meant for me, because some of it I was embarrassed about before. And then I looked at it and I was like, hey, you know what? This shows me it's okay. And that there are other people who are like me, and that this is actually a strength of mine. And I need to figure out how to use that. So I think emerging leaders, one of the things that's hardest is that we don't understand yet how we fit into the grand scheme of things. And we don't understand what our strengths are and how we're perceived by others. And what you're about to share with us does all three of those at once.
Yeah, it does for sure. And it'll be fun for people to get their own results. And
yes,
hopefully they'll enjoy the experience as much as you and I have.
Yes. Okay. So if you're listening to this recording and you don't have your Predictive Index survey report in front of you, hit pause. Actually, wait 1 second, because we're going to show you the link in case you don't have it in front of you. Go take your survey, then come back and watch this and learn about it. This is an amazing tool and something that's being donated by Steve and his company that is normally tremendously expensive and valuable.
And this is the link that Lauren mentioned just a moment ago for you to take a free PI survey. You'll be able to get your results immediately after completing the survey. It'll take you less than 10 minutes, so put the video on pause, go take your survey, because you'll want to have it in front of you because of some of the things that I'm going to show you as we go through today.
Very important. And let me shout out and say thank you for using a picture when I looked so young.
That is
what
I
used to look like.
I love this picture. It reminds me, I still was gray-headed 20 years ago.
When we met, you look like this now.
But you just as beautiful today as you were then, and I mean that not just physically, I mean internally as well.
Thanks.
And
Thanks.
It's a great thing to be able to share this planet with you.
Oh, you're an angel. All right, here we go. Take it away, Steve.
All right, everybody. If you noticed on this slide, we're going to talk about how to build great teams. And you can't build a great team unless you understand how to leverage your own gifts and your own skills. And so what we're going to do is that we're going to take this behavioral instrument and we're going to learn what our greatest strengths are and how to apply it in a business environment. So I want you to make sure you have your copy of your PI printed out, have it in front of you, and have a pencil or a pen to be able to mark it up. Because the things that I'm going to share with you, you'll want to be able to refer back to it and read it and think about it over a period of time. It becomes more and more valuable over time. Every time that you have an experience, you'll want to refer back to it. So if you're going to build a great team, the first thing you got to understand is that you got to understand how to decode the humans that are going to work on your team. And this is an incredibly difficult task without the aid of science. Because if you look at this picture, you can see all kinds of people here. And if for those of you that are aspiring to become a future leader, you already know, because you've had success in your job, that the customers that you dealt with all differ completely from yourself and from your teammates. And it's very difficult to create relationships quickly and understand how they're going to function. And yet in business, we have to understand how to relate to our team members, and we have to learn how to communicate with them. And more importantly, we have to understand how to inspire them to become better than they were the day before. Great leaders are always, and let me say that again, they're always helping people improve from day to day. If you look at Lauren's experience, you should see that very clearly. She shared that she came in totally inexperienced in management, but every day she got better. She learned how to leverage her strengths. In other words, she learned how to accept herself, inspire her team members, and became a phenomenal success. And we want that same thing for you. And it starts with understanding yourself as a leader. But before we get to that, I want to show you one of the biggest problems that managers have all the time. And if you're going to aspire to leadership, here's going to be the question you're going to have to ask yourself at some point very near to the beginning of your management career. And that is, you look at your employees and you're going to be asked this question: were they dead when you hired them, or did you kill them? Whoa. One of my favorite Deming quotes. Now, Lauren, you can relate to that, can't you?
God, I can. I really can. You guys, what he's speaking is such the truth. It does start with accepting yourself, but then there's this other part where you have to accept the people on your team. And for some of us, that's the hardest part in our first couple months, is just sort of massive disappointment. But right, like nobody on your team is going to work as hard as you do. Let me just tell you that right now. And you will ask yourself, did they come to me like this, or is this my fault? Right?
And it's a tough thing. It's a tough question to answer. That's why I like to begin here. Because if you understand that at some point you're going to be asking yourself this question, then you can approach your job and your career differently, because you're asking yourself all along, what's different about them than me? So as we do that, and feel free to stop me, Lauren, if you want to make a comment, but I want to move quickly to to these humans. And if you look at this slide, this is a picture of a person, and up here at the top, we're measuring behavior and cognitive. These are our brain capabilities. And we know that this is kind of fixed. Now, when I say cognitive, I'm saying think about it from a standpoint of people that you've met. Some people learn really quickly. Some people take more time to learn. Some people need a lot of detail, a lot of data, and some don't need a lot of data. But this cognitive ability is pretty well fixed in our life. It doesn't really change much over time. Well, I'm going to show you that behavior, this part that kind of makes us the human beings that we are, doesn't really change much over time either. The important part is that we have to understand how we are going to perform under pressure. Now, I want you to remember that phrase, perform under pressure, because if you're in management, I promise you, you will be under pressure. Work is a 4-letter word for a reason, and that reason is pressure. You don't go to work not expecting that you're going to have demands made on yourself and your time. And so we have to learn, what are our natural behaviors? How are we going to respond when pressure's on us? But if you look at this individual, look at this bottom part down here. Every person will come to you and that applies for a job. They're going to give you a resume, and they're going to point out all about their education, their knowledge, their skills, their experience. That they're going to tell you how great they are. Remember, if you really aspire to be a respected leader, you are totally dependent on the success of your team. It's not just you. Your team has to succeed. Fair statement, Lauren?
Oh, it's so fair. And you guys, I think about my PI and what I've learned from Steve so often still today. I want to share with you briefly that in the stress of launching this new program of Girls Club, I've thought about it many times when I'm up working at 3 o'clock in the morning of, okay, well, here I am under pressure. What's my behavior, right? And how am I acting? And how is that helping my team succeed or not succeed? Because I got to be honest, I've not been my best self. I've been massively impatient. I've been a little authoritative. It's been like, let me just do it myself and get it done instead of trying to lead the team to do it with me. It's like, hey, I'm winning as a program coordinator, but I'm failing as a leader right now. And it's frustrating. It really, really is. But then I do keep in mind during that, my PI, like, okay, I'm under stress. What behaviors are going to come out and how is that coming off to my team? And knowing that helps me take a step in the right direction to mitigating that.
Absolutely. And just a reminder here, again, here's the link. If you haven't taken the survey, go do it now, because the next pieces of our presentation are going to show you how to read the information that you've got.
Yeah, there's a printout that's going to tell you some information, but it's not as powerful as the inner workings of how to actually read it. So here we go. Here's the money.
All right. So when we look at predictive index, when you look at your report, you're going to see these funky graphs at the top of your report. Now I'm going to show you that they're sitting right here on the top of your report. This is a copy of my PI and my report. And the real magic in PI is located in these graphs. The report is very helpful, and I'm going to show you how to break that down and how to understand it. But when you understand why these graphs, what they say and what they mean and why they were put together the way that they are, then you are in a position to really understand yourself in a much, much better light. So let's look at what this really means. So I hope you've got your pencil, your piece of paper, you've got your PI in front of you. And we're going to go through this graph, and I'm going to show you exactly how to read your PI. Now, if you'll notice, I'm going to put up on the slide here, we have 3 graphs. The top one is labeled self graph, and I want you to put on the side next to that your natural behavior. Now, make a note somewhere on your paper that your natural behavior is how you're going to perform under pressure at work. This is the most important graph. It rarely changes over time. You're going to be this person now, tomorrow, and like Lauren and me 20 years from now. You're still going to be that same person. The question is, what do we do with that? And how do we understand to leverage our strengths in such a way that we can minimize the problems that we are facing? The middle graph, the one titled Self-Concept on your report, label it changing behavior. Another way of looking at changing behavior is, how are you coaching yourself today? And one of the problems, and I just will point this out now, before you even know anything about the dots or the graphs, if this middle graph looks drastically different than the top graph, unlike mine looks almost the same, just one is not quite as wide as the other. But if your middle graph looks completely different than the top graph, then you're probably not coaching yourself to your strengths. You're listening to what other people are telling you to be, and you're adjusting your natural behavior based on what they're telling you. And I would tell you, as a leader, people will see right through that. They're not going to respect that. What they're going to respect, what they're going to love, is this person in the top graph, this person that naturally is who you are. In other words, the person you were intended to be if you just knew what your real strengths were. And we're going to talk more about this in just a moment. The bottom graph, the one labeled synthesis, is the combination of these two graphs. It's a numerical combination. And generally speaking, it's what the world observes. It's the behavior that they see that's the effect of your self-coaching. So if you want to be your best, you want to be in this top graph. And this is the one we're going to spend most of our time on. A couple of key points I want you to write at the top of your report, as I've done here. Put lower on the left, meaning lower amounts of a behavior, and higher on the right, or higher amounts of behavior. You'll also note in this top graph, we start everything from this middle line, which we call the midpoint, at the numeric 0. Every 5 little tick marks that you see here represents 1 sigma, or 1 standard deviation of distance from this midpoint line.
So we just got deep into math, everybody.
We just did.
Right?
And as you know, Lauren, I'm a former math major, so I got to talk about sigmas.
Right, and I'm going to have to translate for us normal humans out here. But what I'm seeing, Steve, is that in your graph, we're looking at the natural graph, that black arrow's in the middle, and then the A and the B are higher, and the C and the D are lower. Does everybody's graph look like that, with A and B on one side and C and D on the other?
Nope, they won't. They'll be in different places on the graph. And
Gotcha.
we're going to talk about what that means as we go through looking at mine. This, by the way, if you didn't remember, this is my PI, so I'm sharing my results with you so you'll understand. Use mine as an example, and then we'll go from there. But what I would want you to do is add, these words I've got up here on the top are not on your reports. I want you to write them down. Generally, between 0 and 1. Vary between 1 and 2 sigmas, and you can see it's on the left and the right, and 3 sigmas extremely on the left and right. Now this is distance from this midpoint. This is really important because what it's telling us is how predictable those behaviors are for me. So when in this case, where the A is in this 2 sigma, are very predictable. Both of these behaviors very predictable. Here's one that's almost very predictable. And then here's one that's in the extreme, extremely predictable. So as we go through this, now I want you to understand what these dots actually mean. The A stands for dominance. Underneath dominance, or beside it, I want you to write need for control. Now, if you look at mine, what this means is that I'm 2 sigmas, very dominant, very need of control. 2 sigmas high, meaning that I like to control my environment. I love to control what I do. I don't like feeling out of control.
You'd rather drive yourself there.
I'd much rather drive myself because that's just the way I am. that dominance, sometimes if I don't know that it's there, it can come across negatively to some people, because I'm making them, I'm forcing them to do something that maybe they don't want to do. And that's never a good leadership quality. You want them to do it on their own. But by being able to understand, yes, I am a high dominant naturally, I know how that I might communicate, and I have to change my communication to be able to suit the needs of the listener.
And
I don't change my dominance, I'm just changing the way I communicate.
Right. And us who are high dominant, right, when you're very or extremely high A, we need independence and we need opportunities to prove ourselves. And
we do.
And you may have grown up like I did as a little girl, like it was weird to be on the cheerleading team and like trying to get everybody to go in a certain direction, or trying to win the awards, and trying to, like, I constantly felt like people looked at me funny because I was such a driver. And right, and so competitive and authoritative, and people aren't used to that from young women.
They aren't, and it can be a really big problem. Now, Lauren knows my youngest daughter, Mallory. Mallory, as an adult, it comes across much clearer, but she's actually more dominant, higher dominant than I am. She's a 3 Sigma, extremely dominant lady.
Yep.
And when she was a child, she'd order everybody around.
Yeah.
She had to learn how to deal with people that were not as dominant as she was. She had to learn when it was appropriate to exercise control and when not to. One of the things that I want to point out, especially to this audience, is that high dominant women oftentimes coach themselves incorrectly. What they want to do is to reduce their dominance to get along. And what they wind up doing is communicating ineffectively. And I don't want you to give up your natural dominance. I want you to learn how to use it. And I'll talk more about that as we move forward.
That's so critical. Thank you very much for that. If ever you felt like you were trying to shrink a little bit to fit in, or can I just say it, to date, that was a nightmare. So like, it's okay. You're high dominant, and it's okay to be high dominant.
I remember, Lauren, when you first started, one of the things that you wanted to do is you wanted everybody to like you first, and instead of respect you. And I was like, I had to coach Lauren and say, Lauren, you're in charge of the team. It's okay for you to be in charge of what they do. They expect you to be in charge. You're not trying to make everybody love you today. They're going to love you based upon the results you get for them.
Yeah, you're 100% right. And I still struggle with it today. I keep interrupting your training. Thank you. Let's keep going. What's B?
No, it's okay. It's perfectly fine. The B is extroversion. And extroversion is not what the United States likes to talk about. A lot of times in the US, we call it extroversion, and in this case, very high extroversion. The need to be talkative, to be the center of attention, etc. Those can't, those can exist, but what extroversion really means is the need to include others in your thoughts, conversations, and decisions. In other words, you like to include people and talk to people. You don't need as much alone time. Does that make sense?
Here's what I love about it. By the way, my PI looks exactly like yours.
Very close.
Yeah, very, very close. I know you're like, it's not exact, back off. But that was my biggest aha when I looked at that. I loved being in the spotlight. And I still today, my very favorite thing is speaking on stage in front of thousands of people, which makes me weird and special. And once I saw that, hey, you know what? I have a 3 high B. I have an extreme need for extroversion, being in the spotlight, being in front of people, including others in everything that I do. I didn't feel bad about it anymore, right? Whereas if I was being made to feel bad about that in the past, it was because, oh, I was just an attention getter. And right, that's the negative way to say that. Instead, now I embrace that and I know that about myself. So
well, that's a good point, Lauren. And I'm going to say one other thing that people need to understand: if you are a high extrovert, meaning that you have your B is on the high side, what that means is that you actually gain energy from interacting with other people. So
Well
when
said.
Lauren says she loves being on stage, well, the fact is that's when she's most alive. That's when she's most energized. Now,
Yes.
that does not mean, though, that if your extroversion is over here on the low side, that you're not going to, that you might not like people, or that you might not be good in sales. That doesn't mean that at all. It means that you prefer more interactions in a personal manner, and that you still relate to people well. You're still friendly. You're still able to do that job of sales and convince people to do the things that they want to do, and that you want them to do. But it doesn't mean that you have to have these group experiences. Lauren and I are more happy if we're doing the group thing.
Mm-hmm. And it just means you've got to make sure that in taking care of yourself, you're scheduling yourself some private time.
Absolutely.
Right? And the permission to stay the heck out of office politics, not your game.
Nope, it won't work for you, and you'll be very unhappy. Let's go quickly to C, because this is going to be a real important one. You can see that this is patience, and patience you should write down need for action. Now, patience, or in this case, the lack of patience, I don't really have much patience. This is a driving force for those of us that are low patient, meaning that we're not just going to sit around and wait for stuff to happen, we're going to go make it happen. And one thing that I would tell you is that the overwhelming majority of great salespeople and great managers and leaders actually are low patience, meaning that they don't just sit around and wait for the world to come to them, they go meet it head on. And so I want you to understand patience, or the lack of it. A lot of people get criticized for it, but the simple fact is, it's what drives you to succeed. And don't feel badly about it, embrace it, learn how to say, you know what, I like that change, and go make it happen. Mm-hmm. Too many women that are low patient, I've coached a number of women that struggle with this. They're naturally low patience, but they coach themselves. If they were to look at this middle graph, the patients would be way over here on the side, and they're miserable. Well, who wouldn't be miserable if you're coaching yourself every minute of every day to be more patient?
Mm-hmm. We somehow feel unnurturing that way.
Exactly.
And just to speak for the impatient women of the world. And I will tell you that it's tough, especially when I take off my girls club and my factor 8 hat and I put on my mom hat, right? Because my 6 and 7-year-old do not move at the pace I would like them to, and I find myself frustrated pretty much all the time. So it's right. I think our roles sometimes as women are expecting us to be more patient, more nurturing, if you will, instead of let's go, let's move, let's change things up, let's have a high, fast pace.
And the simple fact is, you can do both. I never hid the fact from my daughters that I was low in patience, but I let them know that, okay, your speed is not my speed. So I let them know the difference between us. And sometimes that's a really good thing to teach people, is that it's okay to be different. And you don't all have to look the same. Great teams don't always look the same.
Good. So sharing our natural behaviors and tendencies with our team is a good thing to do as leaders.
It's a wonderful thing to do, because, I'll tell you, every person on every team wants their manager, their leader, to be predictable. There's nothing worse than having a leader that's one way today and a completely different way tomorrow.
Makes sense.
That's where people really struggle. And I'll promise you that if you try to operate, I hear people in leadership, they'll say, well, I'm one way at work and I'm another way at home. Yeah, okay, try doing that for 20 years.
Right. I really feel like I came into my own as a leader when the face I put on every day was no longer a mask, and was exactly the same face wherever I was.
Exactly.
And that meant being a little bit different at work and being a little bit different at home, and then accepting that and using it as a strength. And
a beautiful way to live your life, because you never have to question how you're going to behave. You know it. You're going to be the same each and every day.
Yeah, there's no being nervous for meetings.
None.
Right? That,
You're
that
just
I
happy.
remember so much, waking up at 5 a.m. Oh, I've got this big meeting today with my VP and I'd be nervous about it. And now it's like, oh, that meeting's in 5 minutes. I don't know, right? You're going to show up who you are every single time and you're going to feel good about it. Damn it.
And I got to tell you, nobody can be you better than you.
Well said, sir. All right. Tell us about the
So
D.
the D stands for formality or details. And meaning, if you look at mine, I'm a low detail person. And meaning that, you know what, I don't want to obsess over details. Now, where this comes into play is in decision making. And what I want you to understand is that each one of these behaviors that I've shown you, they actually work with the other three behaviors. No behavior operates in a vacuum. So my dominance works with my patients, my dominance works with detail, my dominance works with extroversion, and so forth. And the predictability of how I'm going to act is based upon the interaction with these behaviors. And that's a little bit deeper than what we normally have time to do here today. But I do want to say that if your dominance is higher than your detail, what that normally means is that you're going to make a decision, that you will actually take the risk of making a decision. As a leader, if your detail is higher than your dominance, meaning it's to the right of this A, so if D is to the right of the A, you're going to have trouble making decisions because you want to make a perfect decision. And I want to teach each of you right now, if you're going to be in management and leadership, you're never going to make perfect decisions all the time. But your people deserve a decision. They hate indecisive managers or managers that say, well, we got to make the perfect decision, and 6 months later, everybody's still trying to figure out what that perfect decision is. Life doesn't work that way.
Oh, that's interesting. Yep. So the A and D combination is one of the first things we look at for leadership. So
we have to look at that. We also need to look at the relationship between dominance and patience, because anytime my dominance is to the right of my patience, it means that I'm more self-driven. I don't have to have my boss kick me in the tail to go do something. It's one of the reasons why I hired Lauren in the first place, because I knew that she would make a decision, she would go change stuff, she would do it even if she didn't know what she was doing.
Sounds a lot like the launch of this program. It really does. Like, we're just going to get out there and do it, and we're not going to do it perfectly, and that's okay. But I'd be willing to bet right now that, you know, the hundreds of women looking down at their predictive index report and learning about themselves, I bet we're going to have a lot of A to the right of C, a lot of that proactive.
No question, you're going to have a lot of it.
Right, and a lot of A over D, that risk-taking behavior, because you ladies, congratulations, raised your hand and said, I want to be considered for this, and I'm going to take a risk on myself and go for it.
And what we want them to understand, Lauren, is embrace it. Love it.
Exactly.
Love it. Love who you are, because that's your best person. There's a couple other things I want to show you on this before we go to the written report. And that is, I want you to look at this E in the bottom graph. You'll see it on yours. You can see in my case, it's to the left of this midpoint line. Now, this is important because it tells me how I'm going to make decisions. In my case, because it's to the left, I depend on my intuition, my gut feel for things. So I don't have to get a ton of data before I feel good about the direction I'm going and I'll make a decision. However, some of you are going to find your E factor located over here on the right side. And that means that you will make a decision, but you tend to follow a logic process. Now, logic means that you're going to think through the same analysis every time when you have unfamiliar situations, and it will take you longer to pull the trigger, longer to make a decision than it will somebody who depends more on their intuition.
I love that. That's fascinating. And then, Steve, I remember back from my training that some people are extremely intuitive or logical in their decision making, right? When that E falls outside of the whole pattern.
When it's way over here, if it were way over here on the left outside your lowest factor, you're an extreme intuitive. And meaning that you'll pull the trigger without any data sometimes.
Yeah. And how about when it's way over on the right?
And if you had one that was way over on the right, you may struggle with decision making for all of your life.
Interesting.
And you've got to be really careful to make sure that you understand the situation you're putting yourself in if you're so logic driven, because remember, sales is not always logic.
Mm-hmm.
It's a combination of art and science.
Mm-hmm.
That's what sales is. So I rarely see people with extreme logic that love sales. It happens, but it's less than 1% of the population.
Good stat for our logical decision makers. All right, let's go to our next. Are we ready? Are we going to the next part?
One other quick thing, and that is, see this number here I circled that corresponds to M? You can see that my M score is 111. That's very high. So I want to give you some norms. A person that has a high M score, meaning higher than 90, then that person tends to be hyper aware of their environment. They're paying attention to all kinds of stuff going on. But it also means that they can be easily distracted. And so if your tendency is high M factor to be distracted, you got to remember to coach yourself to focus when you're doing a one-on-one. So if you're doing a one-on-one coaching session with a teammate, then turn off your phone, turn off your computer, don't get distracted, focus on them so they'll pay attention.
Yes, now, we have squirrels. Squirrel.
Yep, absolutely, we do. I call what I do is living by the law of shiny objects. I see a shiny object and I'm off to that shiny object. So I have to learn how to focus. The good news is I do real well at that today, but early in my career I struggled with it. Now, if your M score is between 20 and 40, that means that you're more naturally a focused individual. And that can really serve you very well, because if you're a focused individual, it means that you're actually paying attention to what's going on. Mm-hmm. So if use that as your strength, you can focus when other people are not being focused. And if you happen to be between 40 and 90, congratulations, you're in the sweet spot. It means that you can focus when you need to naturally. You can be aware when you need to be naturally. So those are the three things that I wanted you to know about that.
I love it. It's always at this stage when I think most women are like, man, can I get my husband to take this? And that's why he doesn't hear me. He's so focused. He has no idea that I'm talking to him right now.
Well, and it's a really cool thing to have the combination. You'd think that two high M scores would be more compatible. But my wife, Cindy, and I are the opposite ends of the spectrum. We make a fantastic team because at 111, I am hyper aware of what our surroundings, what's going on. She is an M score of 30. So she is really hyper focused. So the combination works exceptionally well. But if you want your husband to take the PI, you have the link. Take advantage of it.
That's awesome. Let's do a quick time check, Steve. Kelly can edit this part out for us. With our horribly late start, my bad, we're running over on time. I'm so happy to extend on my side. How are you doing? I want to be respectful.
I'm fine. We've got probably 5 minutes more.
All right, great. We'll go and we'll just plan on doing our commercial at the end, and we'll probably go to about 3:15.
Okay, we're good.
Great.
All right, we've talked about M score now. Let's quickly look at your written report. And I'm going to go through this pretty quickly because what I want you to see is how this report was actually designed and what your takeaways are. We report in the written format only results from your top graph. We don't talk about how you're coaching yourself or how other people perceive you. We don't include M score. We don't include whether you're logical or intuitive. So when you look at your report, you look at the strongest behaviors. These are your most predictable behaviors. They're ranked in order of predictability 1 through 6. So 1 would be your most predictable behavior, 2 your next most predictable, and so forth. Consider this your most consistent behaviors. meaning when you're under pressure, you're going to show these and you're going to demonstrate it. So learn them, read them, think about situations where you actually do these things. It will help you in your leadership career. In the rest of the report, we break down and provide a management style. This is how you tend to manage people and projects. And then the selling style or influencing style on your report is how you get people to do what you want them to do. So this is really key if you're a manager, because it's how you're going to tend to manage your people. Now, the problem with that is that if you tend to manage one way and they are completely opposite of you, it means that you have to adjust to their style. Remember, as the leader, it's always your responsibility to adjust to your team, not the other way around.
Good point.
And then the last thing is management strategies. And this would be how you want people to manage you. Now, this is really important for you ladies, because I want you to take this, and whoever you're reporting to today, you look at this and explain to them, hey, if you want me to be my best, this is how I like to be managed.
Bingo. So I'm going to issue a challenge on that right now. As part of Girls Club, we're doing our best to get everybody involved with their managers and their executive sponsors within the company. And the challenge is this: take this report to your next one-on-one, or book one special if you don't have one in the next 2 weeks, and share your report and your management strategies.
Bingo. It'll also pave the way for that next promotion that you're going to get.
You would just be shocked, right? and having the confidence to sit down and talk about how you work and what you need and how to best be managed and how you plan on managing a team and getting their input in that is a wonderful conversation. And I don't know a leader today who wouldn't look at that and say, this is fantastic. This is somebody who's really on the right road to get them where they want to go.
Wouldn't it be great if your boss didn't have to figure out how to manage you?
Yep. And then, so I love it. Like, each part of this report, what's so powerful about it, right, is the first one is what you just spend some time with this. If you're a journaler, do it. If you're a meditator, do it. If you're, right, this is the conversation I want you to have with yourself in the car on the way home. Don't worry, people know you're on Bluetooth, think you're on Bluetooth, right? It's like, talk to yourself about this, because this is you. How can you use this?
Absolutely.
Your middle is what you're sharing with your team, right?
Absolutely.
Here's how I'm going to come at you. Here's the way I work best, and how do you work best, and how can we integrate these? And then the last one's what to have with your manager. And I love it.
All right, awesome. And just in case you forgot the link, here's the link again: mojou.me/girls club. Feel free to take that PI survey, and if you want to get your spouse to take one, or your significant other, please
or
do.
Your manager or your mentor.
Yep, it's perfectly fine. I'm happy if you do that. Take advantage of it.
It's a really good thing.
Well, I've got one other thing, Lauren, and that is to share how people can connect with me and get more information. Just for the Girls Club. I wanted to just put this up here and tell you that, look, I've written, as Lauren said, 2 books, Manager Mojo, Be the Leader Others Want to Follow. That's my personal story of how I screwed up as a manager when I started. And then Lead with Mojo is really a step-by-step process on how to become a great leader. So if you want a free book, I'll be more than happy to send you a free book. All you got to do is email me, steve@managermojo.com. Let me know which book you want, if you want a hard copy or you want an electronic copy. If you want a hard copy, I'll be more than happy to provide you one free of charge. I want to introduce you as well. You can sign up. I have a leadership training site for managers at mojouniversity.com. You can sign up there, try it out for a couple of weeks, look at all of the stuff we do. No charge. It's totally up to you. Or if you just prefer to teach yourself and you want to learn all about leadership, we have over 400 episodes on our totally free podcast where I interview thought leaders in management and leadership from around the world. You can view any of those, download them, listen to them at managermojo.com.
These are tremendous resources, everyone. I'm so grateful, Steve, that you're making these available to my crew here. And the PIs are just invaluable to your own kind of personal arsenal and your career, and to put in your toolkit as you grow as a leader. Steve, you also provide personal coaching. Is that right?
I do. I do work with people for coaching. I primarily work with teams today of people rather than just individuals.
Wonderful.
But if you have a situation you need somebody to talk to about, I'm more than happy to have that conversation with you. The simple fact is, I want you to be successful as a leader. I just want to say one thing, Lauren, and that's this. The world needs more women that will step up, lead teams, lead companies, and lead the world. Step out, claim your space. And if we can help you in any way to achieve that goal, we're all in. I just want to finish by just simply saying this. Thank you for listening today, and thank you for taking the time to invest in your own future. Because if you don't control your future, it means somebody else is, and that's not a fun thing to do.
Oh, I couldn't have said it better myself. Bravo. Thank you so much, Steve Caldwell. Everybody get your predictive index survey. Follow Steve, listen to the podcast, get to know his services. I personally recommend him. He made all the difference in my career. Thank you for your dedication, for your wisdom, for your training today, and for this amazing tool.
My pleasure, Lauren.
I bet that people who are looking at their PI right now have some questions, and we are going to make you available to everybody live to come in and do some Q&As.
I'd be happy to do that, and I welcome any questions you have. The whole point is for you to achieve the success that you want to achieve for your own life. If you got questions, don't let them sit there. Come ask. We'll be glad to help.
You guys, this is such amazing access. You are just one of my very favorite people. Thank you, Steve Caldwell, for being with us today, and we'll see you again in our live Q&A session. Very best, everybody. Run those PIs. Enjoy the feedback and the self-knowledge and the power in that. Thank you, Steve.
My pleasure. Thank you.